in too clearly put there, and most headlines now trumpeting this particular headline, including we're seeing things like the president's thunder. A lot of things unfolded yesterday. It was eventful, it was pomp and color, a lot of coverage also coming your way, even as we continue to highlight, including body language. You know, most of the times we don't run away from the non-verbal cues that we pick from such ceremonies, but really vividly we saw there, just as he promised, President or former President Uhuru Kenyatta handing over the different instruments of power to the now new president, and that is the fifth president, William Ruto. Quite interesting. I'm going to have experts on set to help me then explain to us what they pick of this, and taking center stage is the kind of power and energy that Ruto has come in as far as the judiciary is concerned. Advocates coming in to say, well, quite a move. 6 judges that have been appointed, previously rejected by former President Uhuru Kenyatta, and he has made it very clear he's started his work, and today we are looking forward to actually seeing President William Ruto preside over the swearing in of these same 6 judges. What did you pick from yesterday's events? Let me know. You know, a lot of Kenyans, 60,000 Kenyans were allowed in the Kasarani Sports, you know, complex or stadium, if you like. And that was, of course, very vivid. We saw the excitement, celebrations across the country. We saw the military come in as well. Over 20 heads of state, you know, of course, gracing that particular event. So really, it's something we want to just look at. What is the after analysis of this particular ceremony? And we're looking at a whole new Kenya. Ruto has also put in some very key promises to this nation, but we're yet to actually analyze each of this with the help of our political commentator and the advocate of the High Court right here in studio. But I also want to open this conversation to you. The comment section is alive and open. We are at Look Up TV across all social media platforms, and a lot of reactions have come from Kenyans. So take this particular opportunity to be part of the conversation using the hashtag #TheMorningDrift. Let me know, do you believe and have confidence in the new regime? What do you expect? What are your doubts? Perhaps to just spice it up a little bit. But for now, allow me to welcome Wakili on set, the advocate of the High Court of Kenya, Mr. John. Thank you very much for creating time.
Thank you so much for having me here.
We have been looking forward to have you on set.
Thank you.
Generally, I just want to go straight into the discussion, but I'm going to give you a minute, of course, to just, you know, as a Kenyan, as a citizen, you know, share your remarks on what it has been. But then immediately we can just go into the agenda of this morning. Karibu.
Asante. First and foremost, I want to congratulate the 5th President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto. As we saw him yesterday in his inaugural speech, he gave out a point of an overview of his journey, which has not been easy, and he quoted, quoting him in, you know, in context to say that a village boy has become a president,
yes,
which is such a big inspiration to a lot of Kenyans out there. I also want to congratulate the deputy president, the second deputy president, since the promulgation of the the constitution that we're having today, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua.
Yes.
I also want to commend the Raila Odinga, the former Prime Minister, and the former running mate, Madam Karua, and the whole team of opposition for accepting, you know, the defeat. You know, it's not easy to lose, you know, an election. And also, I want to commend Kenyans for, you know, remaining peace and maintaining the calmness, ensuring that Kenya, you know, is growing tremendously in terms of its, you know, democratic space.
And of course, just to pick from that, the, you know, Tanzanian president came out to say Kenyans have given one of the greatest gifts to the region, and that is the peace that we have actually given during this particular just concluded elections, and now during the swearing in. Just the transition of power was quite smooth. We also saw the Ugandan president acknowledging and appreciating Kenyans for the same. But now, because you are in here, it's very important to pick on some of the, you know, actions that the president is taking quite immediately, even as we wait on, you know, Mr. Kennedy to join us, who is the political commentator. The judiciary had, a bit of contention then during Uhuru's regime,
yes,
including the 6 judges who were once rejected. Now we're seeing now the former deputy president and now the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya appointing these same 6 judges. And today we are expecting him to preside over the swearing in.
yes.
What do you take of this? And if you want to, we can also begin with what exactly was the contention during Uhuru's regime as far as these 6 judges are concerned.
Okay, thank you so much. One thing that I know all Kenyans noticed and have seen is that, immediately after the nullification of the 2017 election, our former president, President Kenyatta, made a remark that he will come to fix judiciary. And I think that was the beginning of the whole, debacle that we have been in. And when you look at the 6 judges, one of them is, of course, Justice Odunga. Between the year 2013, 2017, he gave a lot of, judgments which were opposing the government. Some of other judges who are, among them include, some of these judges who are part of the High Court team that, saying that BBI is null and void. So the process, as Article 166, stipulates,
yes,
is that the Judicial Service Commission is mandated to oversight, the public service of the judiciary, of the judicial officers. And they should, initiate interviews, vet, give a list to the president to appoint and to swear in. So the mandate of the president is to appoint and to swear them in. So the other mandates of, interviewing, vetting is for the Judicial Service Commission. And you know that in Chapter 15, we have, independent commissions,
yes,
which, something that they call, separation of powers and independence of institutions. So I think that was the beginning of the whole debacle, and at least now I would like also to commend the 5th president,
yes, for
moving with speed and, defending and protecting the constitution that he sought to defend by appointing them and, conducting the swearing in of the judges today.
Quite immediate, really, quite immediate. And I think that is one of the historic things we're seeing right now. It's like, I'm going to put things in order. And that is what Ruto is actually doing.
Yes.
Now, what we're expecting so far now, when these judges take over office, we're looking at a revamped judiciary. We're looking at a more independent and strong judiciary. Really, the heart of a nation, I must say, is justice, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, and, to add on that, 1st July this year, the Judiciary Fund was operationalized. So now the independence now of the judiciary is something that, it's look more active than it was in papers.
All right.
Because at least the budget now of the judiciary is with the chief registrar. We had the president, the 5th president yesterday say that, we'll work with the judiciary, increase a budget of 3 billion per year annually, and help them to continue the process of digitization,
yes,
so that we can be able to clear the backlog of cases, so that also Kenyans can be able to get justice. We also saw him say that they will work together on the infrastructure of judiciary.
Yes. Very, very important. Speaking of infrastructure, have you given a thought to the people living with disability? Really, I've been thinking over and over about how the judiciary is actually structured,
yes,
the courts,
yeah,
and really, I think one of the things that the incoming, or really the new regime should be looking at, and even you, Achilles, as far as you actually advocate for our rights, I think a bit sidelined is the people with living with disability, where the RAMs are not there. This is...
No, that is very true.
Has it been worked on? Is it going to be worked on? Is it an accommodation we're looking at?
Yes, I think that is very true. Where people with disability have been are discriminated upon in many instances, which has been violating Article 27 of the Constitution.
Yes.
And I think now the former Chief Justice Maraga began the implementation of the infrastructure, digitizing judiciary, doing what. So I think now the new CJ, Madam Mother Kome, will now work on that. Improve the small claims court all over to all the counties, build the 7 high courts remaining in every county, and over one that is small magistrate courts. I think that one will be able to ensure that we have an expedite just and, fair process.
Even with the extra budget.
Yes, yes.
And of course, now that the executive arm of government seems to be working closely with the judiciary,
yes, yes.
Let's cross over to another, the executive arm of government. As far as security is concerned,
yeah.
President, Ruto has also really come out very intentional about the police, ensuring that they are going to be autonomous,
yes.
Having to work on their autonomy. We have for the longest time talked about police need that,
yeah.
they risk their lives even more, there's need for a certain kind of budget. What are your thoughts really, even within the constitution, what the move, Ruto has made according to his new regime,
yeah.
as far as really cushioning and covering this particular arm of government under the executive arm that is maintaining law and order, the police right now?
Yeah, I think that is something which, something which is, a very smart move
yes.
by the President of Kenya, because we have seen the police, they have not been living in the good states that should be living in, and, they play a key role in, protecting us, giving us, adequate security. At times even they go into, extent of risking their own lives
absolutely
to protect us. And the Office of the Inspector General is an independent office. So I think what the President is doing is just, actualizing what the Constitution says, that the Office of the Inspector General shall be an independent office, the same way that, the Judiciary Fund has been given now to the judiciary to manage their own, things.
Yes.
So I think now the Office of the Inspector General, working closely with the National Police Service Commission, will be able now to, remain independent as they were, because talking of the previous regime
yes.
that, is going out, the budget from the police was coming from the PS Interior. So that one, it corroded the independence of the police service as it should be. So I think this is a very wise move. It's actualizing the Constitution, and I think going forward in the right, with the kind of these moves, we'll be able to make, Kenya much better.
Yes, and yeah. I'm looking at if then we can kill bribery and corruption, yes. Where then speculations had it. I wouldn't want to use, word speculate yes. on air, but we're really looking at reinforcing and, making stronger the police force so that
yes.
we can actually have them at the forefront of fighting menace like corruption and bribery, among other things.
Yes, yes.
Now, I want us to look at some of the stories. I mean, just looking back at how the regime took over yesterday, it was a lot of pomp and color. It was beautiful. Yeah, yeah. It was a full stadium, 60,000, over 60,000 capacity there, 10,000 police deployed. So we want to take a look at this particular story. We come back to highlight some of the speeches and many more things in action, including what has been set apart for the diaspora. But really, William Samoei Ruto is the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya, and President Ruto was sworn into office alongside his deputy Rigathi Gachagua in a historical ceremony held at Kasarani Stadium, and which was attended by a multitude of Kenyans. Now, of course, our reporter Henry Tende was on location. He took his time. He actually, put together a lot of events, including the swearing-in events, and he's going to take us through the colorful swearing-in in the process as Ruto assumes office for the next 5 years. This was actually our first and top story last night. Let's take a look at this pomp, colorful event as the new regime took over yesterday.
The state as follows. Whereas Honorable Dr. Ruto William Samoei was on the 15th
September the year 2022 is now firmly entrenched in the history books of the country as President William Ruto is sworn into office as the 5th Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.
Mr. President-elect, please repeat after me. I,
William Samoei Ruto,
swear
that I will truly
and diligently serve the people,
and the Republic of Kenya,
in the office of the President
in the office of President
of the Republic of Kenya, that I will diligently discharge
my duties
and perform my functions in the office of President of the Republic of Kenya, and I will do justice to all in accordance with this Constitution as by law established and the laws of Kenya without fear, favor, affection or ill will. So help me God.
Tumpongeze tena kwa makofi Rais wa 5 wa Jamhuri ya Kenya.
Then came the swearing in of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua.
Asante.
Rigathi Gachagua,
Do swear that I will always truly and diligently serve the people and the Republic of Kenya in the office of the Deputy President
of the Republic of Kenya,
that I will diligently discharge my duties and perform my functions in the said office to the best of my judgment, that I will at all times when so required faithfully and truly give my counsel and advice to the President of the Republic of Kenya, that I will do justice to all without fear, favor, affection or ill will, and that I will not directly or indirectly reveal such matters as shall come to my knowledge in the discharge of my duties and committed to my secrecy. So help me God.
Tumpongeze kwa makofi Mheshimiwa Naibu wa Rais.
After the oath of office, William Ruto was declared president officially, taking over the leadership of the country from retired President Uhuru Kenyatta.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, tumpongeze kwa makofi, tumpongeze His Excellency, the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya.
To effect the complete handover, the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta handed over the instruments of power to William Samoei Ruto that included the Constitution and the military sword, this confirming him as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.
Pongeze kwa makofi anapopokezwa katiba ya Jamhuri ya Kenya. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Rais.
Ilivyo kawaida kama kamanda wa kijeshi waendapo vitani ukibeba kitara kuashiria wao ndio wanatoa amri. Hivyo basi, kwa kukabidhiwa kitara hiki, Mheshimiwa Rais Daktari William Samoei Ruto anakuwa kirasmi ndiye amiri jeshi mkuu wa majeshi ya ulinzi ya Jamhuri ya Kenya.
Tumshangilie Mheshimiwa Rais kwa makofi anapopokea kitara hichi. Na ni dhahiri shahiri kwamba anakuwa amiri jeshi mkuu wa majeshi ya ulinzi ya Kenya.
In the shining sun in the capital city of Kenya, Nairobi, Dr. William Samoei Ruto is officially the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya. And as he takes over the mantle to steer the country for the next 5 years, many Kenyans are hopeful that he will live true to his promises of building a strong economic structure that will realize greater heights of development. Henry Tende, Look Up TV, Kasarani, Nairobi.
All right, congratulations are in order. That is Henry Tende. Of course, a very brilliant compilation there of yesterday's events. Remains historic in this country, 13th of September, the year 2022. Also not forgetting that this is the 13th parliament coming in. So 13 was quite a number there for now President Ruto. But let's talk about some of the things he's taking action on. And diaspora gets ministry as William Ruto looks outwards. Kenya will establish the Ministry of Diaspora to address issues affecting its citizens, even as it focuses to boost, remittances. And President William Ruto has announced. Now, diaspora, rose to about 283.6 billion, or 13% from 250.4 billion over the period January to July 2022. The U.S. alone is the biggest source of remittance to Kenya, accounting for about 59% of the total sum of funds sent into the country this year. Now, President Dr. Ruto said that his government will also strengthen diaspora services in all embassies and set up a mechanism for public participation by the Kenyans living abroad. If you allow me, Wakili,
yes,
to go into other details after this, let's just first look at what this means for Kenyans living in diaspora. We do acknowledge that there has been a lot of very deep, disheartening stories, including just in the, Saudi Arabia, where we have had issues of Kenyans who are suffering unemployment, rushing there for greener pastures. So when President Ruto says this, as far as, the justice and rights are concerned, what do you pick of it? What do you make of it? And how positive is this?
Well, thank you. When you were reading about the theories and stuff, there's a guy who was called John Locke, and he came up with a theory that he named a social contract theory, whereby citizens surrender their rights to the government, and it's incumbent upon the government, to protect or defend, provide security, and what have you. I think this is a move in the right direction for the president, because as you have informed us, the foreign remittance is one of the key, source of, foreign exchange, foreign money coming from abroad.
All right.
So I think our brothers and sisters in abroad also need to get value for the money. They need, a good example, if we can remember, it's during the COVID era, when there were there were all over issues. Embassies were closed. I don't know what, and Kenyans were suffering out there. So at that period, that point in time, we would have, very working embassies. We would have, a good, PR and what have you.
And international relationships are very important.
Yes. So I think that one would, would help Kenyans a lot. The other case that we are talking about is the one in Saudi Arabia, or rather the Middle East, the Kenyans going there. We have, a challenge of around, around 5 million people who are jobless in this country. And there are these guys who come here, giving them hope of, working in abroad so that you can earn a living. And, Kenyans being so desperate, looking for a bright future, because everyone loves a bright future.
Yes.
You just go there and, when you get there, you get that what you're promised is not what's happening abroad. Recently, we have seen a lady who was brought back, I don't know, it was from Saudi.
Yes, it was from Saudi.
So it is very unfortunate. And over that also, I remember, because I'm also the legal officer of Bunge la Mwananchi. To this afternoon, we are taking a petition to Parliament over the same, because we have, a lot of rampant cases of Kenyans, being abused, killed in abroad.
Wakili, if you allow me to interject, despite all this that is going on, I'm sure that in the past 10 years in Uhuru's regime, he tried to cushion Kenyans, domestic workers, for that particular, concern, trying to bring in a few policies here and there. What really happens is that disconnect, therefore, in actually forming these policies and implementation. Where do we seem to be going wrong? Because because Ruto might come in, yes. He was also in that former regime as a deputy president. What would then be different?
Well, I think the
ministerial level, yes, that's different.
Yeah, the ministerial level. I think the ministerial level will be able now to, ensure that there is more diplomatic ties and diplomatic relations with, those countries. But I think the bone of contention here is unemployment.
All right.
If we are able to address employment, I think those cases will not be as much as we have today. Because I remember there was a time they tried to ban. But then, even after banning, you see people are using other illegal means to find themselves there. With these agencies, they ban the agencies, but you find Kenyans are using illegal means to find themselves there. So I think the bone of contention is unemployment. And yesterday, as we had among the policy directive that he's talking, is that he will move from the policy of capital-intensive projects to labor-intensive projects. The labor-intensive project will be able to employ many Kenyans. We also have even the Hustler Fund, whereby people can get, good loans without being asked to bring the checks and what have you. So I think this is a step in the right direction.
And we're also going to be looking in further, even as we're going to be joined in by our political commentator, Mr. Kennedy is already here, on the depth of the Hustler Fund, the realistic nature of it. We'll also be looking at, all those who are blacklisted, that particular credit area as well. So we will still continue this conversation. However, quite positive remarks coming from Wakili this very morning. Wakili, before we actually take this break in a very short time, you want to touch a bit on the Hustlers Fund. I know you have touched on it on as one of the very key ways for this new regime to maneuver unemployment. A lot of people saying, well, it's a good trajectory, but how realistic?
Well, from my understanding of the Hustler Fund, it will look like more of a revolving fund. And I think back at homes, and our mothers, they had these chamas. And if the chamas used to, you'd borrow, work, and then it's more of a revolving fund.
Yes.
If the chamas, if the chamas did that and they were successful until some became circles, cooperatives, I'm very confident now this is a more of a chama, but in a big extent, whereby you are given a loan without a collateral. Because most of the young people in this country don't have the collateral that the banks and these institutions ask for. I think that one will be able to ensure that very many people are able to access the fund. You can go now and do your businesses, and then you bring it. It will be more of a revolving fund. So I think it's something that is more practical. Yeah.
I like when you're saying it's more practical, it's relatable with anybody in whichever class, whichever level of, earning, salary, and taxes also. We want to touch on taxes. Before I take this short breather, I know we'll go back to some of this when our other guest also joins us. He has been very intentional, very clear about taxes. And he said he's going to be the first person to always, file his taxes and give back. What would be your take on that? Because Kenyans have been paying taxes. I think, KRA hits its target. They have been loyal to this. What do you think? Because some of us feel it's nothing new, really.
I think from his point of view, if you look at the regime that that has gone,
that has ended, yes.
When you see number one, is that there was a lot of corruption, a lot of things happening, including and when I talk of these, I mean the big fishes. These big fishes, were not filing tax. They were giving themselves, these how do they call them? The tax holidays themselves. For example, when you look at the merger of, I think, ANC Bank and I don't know what other bank.
All right.
They did not pay a tax of around 300 million. So Kenyans, the local Kenyans, do their best. They hard work and toil and pay the little that they do to pay taxes. Why are we not giving these? Why are these big people not also paying the big companies? Another thing, KRA was also used as a tool, as a political tool to hunt, people who are in the opposite side of the divide.
Is it?
Yeah. So if you look at, very, very many companies have crossed, talk of Keroche, talk of, you know, a good number of companies because of the prioritization of the whole tax issue. So I think he was very right saying that you want KRA now to be more professional, efficient.
And objective.
And objective.
All right, I don't know what the thoughts of the viewer is really, but please let us know what your thoughts are as well, even as we continue to have this conversation on the new regime. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, and equally would love to hear your thoughts. Use the hashtag #TheMorningDrift. Do you agree, disagree? Would you love to challenge anything in particular during this particular conversation? Of course, our political commentator will be joining us in the next few minutes, so we have this even more spiced up. It's getting more intense, but of course solution focused is our main agenda, and our objective here is to ensure that we understand fully the new regime. We take a short breather. We'll be right back. Don't go too far away. our political commentator, Mr. Kennedy Olwero. Thank you so much for creating time.
Thank you very much, Kennedy Odweo.
Odweo, thank you.
Apologies to you and your team, and apologies to our viewers.
It as well.
For coming in late. But I'm glad to be here. It's good to be back.
It is good to be back.
And we are celebrating. Freedom is here.
All right, just speaking from the speech that we're going to be going in shortly, but before I look at the Deputy President's speech, and you could also help us understand it now that you've started by talking about freedom, which has been making part of most of their conversations, let's take a look at what the body language was like yesterday. And immediate former President Uhuru Kenyatta handed over power to William Ruto, who is now the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya, in yesterday's ceremony at the Kasarani Stadium. Even as he successfully oversaw a peaceful transition of power, Uhuru Kenyatta's declaration of Azimio coalition's leader Raila Odinga as his leader continues to draw public scrutiny. Now, Simba Charles Kiage looks at what his body language spoke of course, the handing over ceremony yesterday. Let's take a look at this particular highlight.
As Uhuru Kenyatta arrived at the stadium, all the attending presidents received a hug and a little tete-a-tete from immediate former President Uhuru Kenyatta. This continued until it got to Ruto, and it turned into a brief handshake with the Kenyatta skipping past the National House Speaker, Moses Wetangula. On his way back to his seat, Ruto avoided eye contact by looking down and sideways as Kenyatta passed in front of him.
One of the things I would say is, number one, for Ruto, he never looks down when it comes to a challenge. He never backs down. He will look you in the eye. So by looking down, it means, he was pretty much maybe avoiding whatever, it might have been a smile or whatever, or people who would have probably maybe read him. And looking back, because this is something that I've kept on feeling that, I don't really get an understanding of where the two of them became enemies. Because even through the campaign, Ruto never talked badly about Uhuru. And, if you look at it, if you look at the body language yesterday and even today, it was friendly. It was almost compassionate. It brought about the remembrance of 2013 when the two of them were now coming into power. And for me, it made me feel like, is it that these two know something that we do not know?
Came the time to hand over the instruments of power. And maybe just for a while, Uhuru Kenyatta lived up to his word, clapping for Ruto and assuming the jubilant demeanor that the immediate former premier has long been known for.
Well, he said he'll be smiling. And, well, he indeed smiled. Although for many people, it almost looked like he was saying, we did it. We did it. We actually succeeded. Almost, kind of. So again, trying to read into this, and I'm sure it's going to take pundits a long time trying to just understand what really happened here, because we're going to hear a lot of things coming from different people. But at the end of the day, all through, he looked comfortable, he looked relaxed, he looked at ease. That's for President Uhuru, and even for President Ruto now, he also looked like he was comfortable. He was in his element, even around President Uhuru. So I would say that there's a lot there that we do not know and we might not ever understand, but yeah, there is something there. There is definitely something.
However, when it was time to take pictures with the new bosses in office, Kenyatta's face was a huge contrast from the members of the picture. Mouth shut, no smile, and when it was time to leave, quickened out, even leaving former First Lady Margaret Kenyatta behind.
You do realize that this was also coming in, was it? No, this was before the speeches, right?
Yes.
I'm not sure about what might have been going through his mind at that particular point. But again, the weight of everything, and even for you, you're handing over. You've had all these trappings of power. You've had, everything at your beck and call. Now you're no longer the most important person in the room. It's going to have an effect on you. It's definitely going to have an effect on you.
At exactly 3:41 p.m. East African time, immediate former president left the stadium as a new tenure for Ruto begins today. For Kenyatta, however, it will be interesting to see if he fully assumes the opposition role as he chairs the coalition that narrowly lost in the concluded election. Simba, Elijah Charles Kiage, Look Up TV.
All right, there we have it. Even going deeper into body language, some of those things that are not really said, but non-verbally, you could pick one or two things. Let me start with you, Mr. Kennedy. I know you are into political commentating. What did you pick of that? Of course, we had a political analyst on that particular compilation saying there is something that he picked. Is it probably a sentiment you share?
I think... I will start by saying that what goes around comes around. Karma has a way of hitting back. When you see Uhuru's face, it's the same face that Ruto had at Bomas during the BBI launch. So you realize he's in the same shoe that he put Ruto in. I want to remind Kenyans that former President Uhuru Kenyatta had once said that you will never hand power to a thief. As a commentator, I have two perspectives. If he was saying the truth, then it means Raila is the thief because he handed power to William Ruto. And if he was lying, then it means he has been lying to us orally because he said we saw him hand over power. But all that aside, that is just political. For me, I think for those who follow politics, you'll understand that Ruto became president against all odds. So Uhuru, from what we see and the little that we know, President William Ruto was never his choice. So that was expected. And I believe, were it not for the constitution that we have and the world that we live in and what we've become, including our obligation. The other day I was telling people, we are so obligated to the world and we are so critical that the world cannot allow Kenya to fall today. So there are many factors that lead to, because if it was for him, personally believe he wouldn't have handed over power. So I believe it shows, Uhuru has been a bit honest sometimes also, especially away from the official duties and stuff. And we're also ushering in another honest presidency where if I don't like you, I have no reason to pretend even to the visitors. So what Uhuru was displaying was exactly what was going through his mind, because he had even refused, he never congratulated the president directly. So he kept quiet to a point where you feel like even what he was doing, it's like someone was pushing him.
All right.
That is what happened.
But ultimately, he did then give the instruments of power, which of course Wakili is going to help us understand. But when you have said, lack of pretense in front of people, in front of the world, Rigathi Gachagua came out as one man who did not pretend at all yesterday. And just to read a bit of that, because we're coming back into the instruments of power and why it's very, very important that at the end of the day, Uhuru had to give them or hand them over. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua hit out at outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration for what he says intimidating them over the last 5 years, promising Kenyans that the incoming administration will tolerate criticism. Now, speaking during the inauguration of President William Ruto as the 5th president, his deputy Gachagua said the country was now free, promising they will guide the country without going after their opponents and critics. If you allow me to quote, he said, "Today, I want to tell the people of Kenya that you are finally free. Public servants and all people of Kenya, you do not have to fear talking through WhatsApp for fear of being recorded." And that's the end of that particular quote by the now Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. I picked that from you saying, even in Uhuru's body language, what we're looking at is an honest, outgoing president and an honest incoming regime. What did you say of those remarks by Rigathi Gachagua? Speaking of recording people and WhatsApp, etc., pretty much intimidation and fear. We don't expect that from this new regime, therefore.
Yes. Well, I want also to second what my brother said.
Okay.
In regards to the body language, that President Uhuru yesterday looked like a person who is, looked so defeated, because openly he campaigned against President Ruto, going against the agreement of 10 years in 2013. But now there is now the president Of course, I don't blame him for that because there is Uhuru Kenyatta, the citizen,
yes,
and the president. He did his law exercising, political rights under Article 38. Can support any person you want. And yesterday, he also came back to finish his law as the president to hand over. Going back to Gashagua's statement, I think our deputy president, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, did not expect what he has passed through, especially coming from a friend, a person who he has served as a personal assistant, a person who they have had, good family ties with for many years. He's a person who is coming now to, unleash the DCI, the police, the KRA, and the ESCC to freeze his accounts, to imprison him, to, a lot of tribulations. So I think yesterday was speaking his mind that what he did not expect what he passed through, especially coming from a friend. And I also think, and I'm very certain that the incoming government will protect and defend the constitution.
Wakili, I'm sorry to interject, and I hope we are on this together. What happened with the freezing of accounts, etc.? Really, was it personal? Was it political? Was it something that ought to be done to anybody who is then suspected or seems to have a certain trail of legal charges? Really, was it really friendship? Was it personal? What is the play here? Because I think things were done in the way they ought to be done according to law.
You see, I'm not a lawyer, but I think I do a lot of reading, especially as a leader. Like he mentioned, as far as politics is concerned, I always tell Kenyans, at least, if you can't read the whole constitution, at least read chapter 1 and chapter 4. And specifically for politics, we have Article 33, 36, and 38. Expression, association, and political rights. When we talk about issues like what were happening, if you want to know that they were politically motivated, by virtue of that money being forfeited to the state, the money that was purported to have not been explainable, it simply means there is a crime that was committed. So as a Kenyan, even if I don't support Gachagua or I support him, I expect that court to say, this is the crime that he committed that led to him accumulating this money. If he laundered, because if you get me today with 1,000, don't I have a right to have money? If you want to tell me that the money is criminal, it's up to you to prove that the money is criminal. Tell me where he got that money. You can't come to me to ask me where he got my money. So that's why he mentioned it's political, because if you are found with the proceeds of crime, then it means you're a criminal. Then you need to go to jail. Why did they not sentence Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president, to jail?
All right.
That is the analogy. When you arrest me over a crime, I expect the prosecution to the end, and we have a constitution and laws that guide that. So the moment it becomes a hiff-haffy, where you choosing the crime to attach to me, and you're not following what is in the law, then it beats even common sense, leave alone the law. And that's why I also insist those charges were politically motivated, and that's why they never ended anywhere.
All right, when you say they never ended anywhere, Wakili, allow me to touch on that again. What are we looking at in the new regime, however? We've seen a lot of, charge sheets, a trail of issues of corruption. I remember President Ruto saying, well, I will declare my wealth, but I have been a chicken farmer, I've been a chicken seller. Now they're saying hustler to now presidency. What are we looking at? Are these charges out of the way?
Yeah, because also to add on supporting that it was a political witch hunt, we can look at the timing of the whole debacle and the dramas that, the DCI and the DCI Kinoti has been, doing against the friends of William Ruto. We can see that when they took that case to court, they went again and, they did not show up in court, they did not give any evidence. And later on, immediately after the Deputy President, Gachagua, was chosen to be the running mate, we saw a certain judge coming, giving a ruling that 200 million should be forfeited to the state. So you can see that, the law was not given its cause to be followed. And that is against the ruling of Justice Maraga, that, the greatness of any country is, fidelity to the constitution and the strict adherence to the rule of law. This regime, I'm looking at this regime that, they'll be able to, uphold the rule of law, fidelity to the constitution, you know, guarantee human rights, you know, rights to protest if there is any issue.
Okay.
You have a right to positive criticism. And I can see it, they have started very well. The president yesterday, you know, saying that he will, and I think he signed an executive order.
Yes,
He will separate the IG from the executive, giving the IG the mandate to be the accounting officer. We also saw him, you know, say that he will support the judiciary.
Yes.
So that now they can be able to, you know, expedite the cases of the corruption and any other cases.
Very important.
So there's goodwill.
All right, there's goodwill. I know we have about 3 minutes to wrap this up, but the heart of this nation are the youth. And Mr. Kennedy, I know you're at the forefront, really always advocating for the youth. You do have sentiments on what the Hustler Fund is about, what the, you know, Ruto's regime is all about as far as the young people are concerned. You might want to touch on this in about 2-3 minutes, but really, from where you sit, how is this, you know, positive for the youth today?
I think for me, as someone who is very passionate and enthusiastic on matters of youth, I believe this is an opportunity that the young people of Kenya need to take up.
All right.
William Ruto, even I was a candidate in the past election, and this is a guy who had so much support, and he was really enthusiastic about working with young people. This is a guy, from my own personal experience, provided platforms and opportunities for young people to also step onto the big stage. That was political. Anyone in Kenya who can give you an opportunity for political development, that is someone who believes in the young people. When you talk of the Hustler Fund, one of the reasons why things like Uwezo and Youth Fund didn't work out, because they had this concocted approach to it. A good idea being implemented in the wrong way.
All right.
You realize that they had this, it was more like a generalized sort of approach. When you talk of the Hustler Fund, we are talking about money that is being set aside for a certain category of people whose needs are understood, whose challenges are understood. In the process, the Hustler Fund will be packaged as per the needs of the hustlers, the low cadre people, so that they can access it conveniently. Unlike in the case of the Youth Fund, where a young man in Kibra is being told to provide collateral for a 15,000 loan. So you realize that amount cannot even emancipate that guy to the level, that business person to that level.
Okay.
We were talking about, there are many other issues, because our focus, when we were talking about the bottom up, we are talking about a situation where the Hustler Fund is supposed to be that catapult that pushes up. When you talk about things like taxes, that Hustler Fund is supposed to create that base that is going to expand the tax bracket to a level where we are able to self-sustain.
All right.
You see, people are raising concerns over the possible shoot in the prices of fuel and food. Personally, I believe if someone has enough money, they have no problem spending.
All right.
But if you can make things very, as you can put the prices as low as almost zero, but if they cannot afford, they do not have income, then they won't be able to make it.
And I see that you agree on matters of income, unemployment, and creating those employment. I know that we needed to have this conversation even for about 6 hours. Everyone is trying to understand the new regime. But gentlemen, thank you very much for creating your time to be here.
I think I was to update them about the symbols.
Yeah, I wish we had that time.
30 seconds.
All right, just to close, just very short, sir, because I really have to close the show.
Yes, because many Kenyans yesterday were not, understanding what was happening. Okay, the sword represents, that the President Ruto is now the chief in command of the defense forces.
Yes.
The presidential standard, symbolizes a new regime, and it dates back to the Commonwealth traditions. And then now we have the constitution that the president is supposed to uphold.
Wow, absolutely. Thank you very much. So they should stop calling it the golden sword and understand what power it holds. Mr. Kennedy Odueyo, Mr. John, thank you so much for creating time. Kenyans, please go further and read the constitution. Very, very important. Just have the constitution challenged, ask questions, because that is the power. And the highest office here is the private citizen. That is your office. Hold them accountable and let us know what your thoughts are. Every other time we'll have guests in studio to help us understand further your power and patriotism. Remember, the flag has also changed, one that will be going hand in hand with his presence. That is the President Ruto, the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you very much for watching, and we do expect to keep that particular new regime in check. My name is Ankey Dorice, but if you do hope to understand how the unga will go down and the price of the fuels will be changing here and there, Simba Kiage is coming in with Look Up business. A lot of insight lined up shortly. Don't go too far away. Have a good morning.